So I said I would do this at the beginning of summer and I never did. So my apologies, but I'm going to run through the verb chart from your verb packet to show you how this works. And let's just pull it up, share there. Okay. So this part I know is the most confusing, and so probably one you had trouble with. To make it easy for you to check your work and see what went wrong, let's just pull up annotate. There we go. So the first thing you need to know is very basically, if in almost every case, if you see second principal part, we know it's present, imperfect, or future. If you see third principal part, we know it's perfect, pluperfect, or future perfect, and that it is active. And if you see fourth principal part, we know it's perfect, pluperfect, or future perfect, and that it's passive. So with that in mind, there is one exception, which is the fourth principal part with an down there, but we're going to get there later. With that in mind, let's start. So second principal part, are there any distinguishing features? The first thing is, does it have an RE? Because if it has an RE, then what it probably is an infinitive. And what we can actually say is that it is a present active infinitive specifically. Oh, this is going to be hard to write on. Present active infinitive. So let's stop annotating and let's use the annotations in this. Can I do that? Here we go. That's too big. Where's the fonts? Fudge. There we go. We can say it is present active infinitive. And so for the sake of this exercise, I should mention, technically Latin only has 3 moods, right? Those 3 moods I'm putting up here are indicative, imperative, and subjunctive. But for this exercise, we're also going to count infinitive and participle. So present active infinitive. If it has an RE and then it has an ending. So what I want you to imagine for no ending is something like amare. Where'd it go? Create a text box there. Picture something like amare, right? It has an RE, but it's not followed by an ending. If it has an RE and then it's followed by an ending, say something like amares, or even amarem, right? Let's use amaret. Then what you have there is a subjunctive, is an imperfect subjunctive. And I don't list the voice, or because the voice, which means active or passive, the voice will just depend on its ending. So amaret is the active, amareter would be the passive, and you can see all that I changed is the ending. So let's say it has a BA, you should know this. This is the imperfect indicative. And again, I don't ask for voice because with the present, imperfect, and future, all that you're changing is the ending. So for this, you can picture something like amabat, and you can see how amabat would be the active and amabater would be the passive. And it would just be based on the ending. Amabam would be the active, amabar would be the passive. So if it has bi, or bo, or bu, or be. Now, the reason I say that is because what I'm talking about is something like amabit. But if we actually conjugate amabit, we get amabo, amabis, amabit, all the way to amabunt in the third person plural. And if we do it in the passive, we get something like amabor, amaberis, amabitter. And so you can see usually, most of the time, it's this bi, right? But there are a few places where it's O, I'm a bow and I'm a bore, and a few places where it's U, which is I'm a bunt and I'm a bunter. And then one place where it's even an E, and I'm a bearis, the second person. But you're looking for that B and not an A, BI or BO or BE or BU, depending. And that's the future active uh indicative or in future passive indicative, because again, it's just about the ending for active versus passive. So future indicative here. Now that is just how we do the futures for the first and second conjugation verbs, words that have an are or ere in the infinitive. So the futures for third and fourth conjugation verbs are actually going to be determined by this letter E. It's a vowel shift. That's how you do the futures for third and fourth conjugation verbs. But we'll get there in a second. Let's continue to go through this chart kind of in order. So this blank NT or dash NS, what I'm picturing is here, I want you to imagine something like a mantis, right? Where it's that NT that gives it away, but it's that NT, you see that dash at the end followed by something. So with Amantis, the tense is, I should have asked for voice here because it's always going to be active. So I'm actually going to break my own format and write present active because I think that's important. But the mood is participle. Sorry, yeah, the mood is participle. So this is why I was saying participle is not technically a mood, but for this chart, we're going to count it as a mood. This ND, and we're going to be talking about this soon in a lot of detail. This is where we get our gerunds and gerundives. But for the sake of this chart, let's just call it the future passive participle. And then this is also where we get things like gerundive of obligation and the gerundive of obligation, sometimes called the future passive periphrastic. I think you'll just be referring to it as gerundive of obligation, but it's a participle technically. So things like you can picture amandus, that would be the masculine nominative singular. And that would mean about to be loved. Or if I say amandus est, it would mean something like he must be loved, because that would be your gerundive of obligation. This ari, eri, e, or iri, that is your passive infinitives, right? Are becomes ari, eri becomes ere becomes eri, ere becomes e, and ire becomes iri. So these are your present passive present infinitive passive. I did those in a weird order. Oh, I did it wrong up here too. Why am I doing mood before voice? I don't know why I did that. Or active up here. Okay. Now we can finally get to the only distinguishing feature is the vowel, and then it depends on the conjugation. So for first conjugation, if you have an A, so you can picture a word like amas or mat, right? Amat or amater. Then we know that that's just the normal. The word for a normal mood is indicative. So we're just going to call this present indicative. But if we have an E, and for an E, I want you to picture something like amet, right? Or ameter, because again, in these, the difference between active and passive is just the ending. Then we've got, instead of indicative, whoops, Apple Z. There we go. We have the subjunctive. This is our subjunctive vowel shift, the he eats a giant you read about in your packet. Second conjugation, it's very similar. The E is what we're expecting. Think of like ha base. And we have our present indicative. The EA is not what we're expecting. And so the EA is our present subjunctive. Third conjugation. So hopefully you saw this when you did ago agere. how that short E in agere becomes an I in ago, agis, agit. That I is really, and sometimes it's you, agunt, that I is really what you're expecting for the present indicative. The A, right, from our vowel shift is what we're expecting from our present subjunctive. In fourth conjugation, that I, right, is what we're expecting from present indicative, and that IA is what we're expecting from present subjunctive. Now, I skipped over E and IE earlier when I was showing you bi. I was explaining that like in words like amo, which is first conjugation, that ama bit, that bi is going to show you that it's future. In third and fourth conjugation, it's going to be this E. So instead of agit, which is present, you'll get something like aget, which is future. So this will be the future indicative. And it's an IE for fourth conjugation, future indicative. So that covers those. Moving on to third. Now remember, third principal part is going to be used for the perfect active tenses. The perfect tenses include perfect, pluperfect, future perfect. So that's kind of what we're expecting here. And we're expecting the voice to always be active. So here we go. If it has the perfect endings, that's iestia, imasistus erant, naturally enough, the tense is perfect. The voice, again, is active for all of these, and the mood is indicative. If it has the ERA, that's your hint that it is pluperfect. And then again, active and active for all of these, and in this case, the mood is indicative. If it has, oh, I missed one. Okay, if it has eri, that's your indication that it is, that it is, the tense is future perfect, active, and indicative. Or alternatively, this is also how we form the perfect, active, subjunctive. So the future perfect, active indicative, and the perfect active subjunctive are identical, except that if you get something like amawero, that's active future perfect indicative. If you get amawerim, that's perfect active subjunctive. So it's that first person singular, either the M or the O will give away which one it is. But other than that, and you're not going to encounter the first person singular as much as third person or second person. So usually you won't be able to tell these apart except in context. Isse, I messed up here. There are two answers for isse. If isse doesn't have endings, which seems to be the suggestion here, then it is the perfect active infinitive. Now, just like you can add endings, remember up here where we can add endings to the present active infinitive, and if we add endings, we get the imperfect subjunctive. So down here, if we were to add endings to the perfect active infinitive, we would get the pluperfect active subjunctive. So there were two answers here, and I messed up by not including both. Okay. The fourth principal part. There was a whole section on your packet about how to do this kind of math. But very simply, if you have the present indicative sum, think of the fourth principal part on its own as the perfect. Oh, yeah. Think of the fourth principal part on its own. Oh boy, this is lagging. Think of the fourth principal part on its own as the perfect passive participle, which I'm writing down here because is it used with the form of essay? No, it's not. And does it have an er? No, it doesn't. That makes it the perfect passive participle. That's what it is on its own. So now we just do addition. So perfect plus present equals perfect. So this will be up here will be the perfect passive perfect passive, because all of these are going to be passive, except for down here in a second. This will be the perfect passive indicative, because it's just basically borrowing all the forms from, it's borrowing the indicative from est. If we get perfect plus imperfect, perfect passive participle plus imperfect, we get the pluperfect passive indicative. If we do the perfect participle plus future, we get the future perfect passive indicative. If we do the perfect passive participle plus the imperfect subjunctive, then just like plus the imperfect indicative, it becomes pluperfect. The difference is, right, perfect plus imperfect is pluperfect. The difference is because it's the subjunctive sm, ss, sset, we get the subjunctive. If we do it plus the present subjunctive sim, just like perfect plus present is perfect, and then because it's subjunctive, sim, sis, sit, we have a subjunctive mood. If we do it plus the infinitive essay, that's how we get our perfect passive infinitive. Now, the only exception to our fourth conjugation, to our fourth principal part pattern, is that if it has this this is the only exception in this whole darn chart. If it has this then what we're dealing with is a future active participle, which is weird because it's not only active, it's also future. Okay, I'm seeing two places I didn't finish, and that's perfect because these two are related. So when it says no ending down here, that's second principal part. Are there any distinguishing features? The distinguishing feature is no ending. So imagine amare, and then you took off the re and you just left it ama. Well, what you have here is actually a singular imperative. So that's why I'm saying number. It's because this is your singular, and it is present imperative. So now the reason I can say singular is because the way you form the plural is you actually add te. So if you see the te, and I want you to picture something like amate, then what you have is your plural present indicative. All right, that's the chart. I'm going to stop this now and try to upload this so you can see it.